I'm a custodian for an office building. I clean bathrooms, take out trash, vacuum, the usual. I work in the mornings, before the office opens. When collecting trash, I'd sometimes find loose papers, under desks, behind desks, beside the trash can, or just lying on the floor. Now, since I never know whether those papers are trash that missed the can or important documents that fell by accident, I usually pick them up and place them neatly on the corner of the nearest desk. Better safe than sorry, right? But apparently, my manager didn't like that habit. One morning, she came in early, looking disgusted. She said, "Trash is being placed on people's desks." Now, obviously, I never put actual trash like food wrappers or crumpled papers on desks, only flat sheets that looked like they might be important. So I explained my reasoning, told her I didn't want to risk throwing something valuable away. But my manager said, "Everything on the floor is trash." And she added, "Our workers aren't immature slobs who drop important documents on the floor." I just agreed and said, "All right, I won't do it again." Flash forward several weeks. She comes in early again, this time looking worried. Turns out a filing cabinet had tipped over the day before, and even though they picked up most of the papers, a few important documents were missing. She asked me if I'd seen them. So I reminded her, well, since everything on the floor is trash, they were probably thrown away. She got irate. She said, "This was an exception. The filing cabinet fell." And I said, "How was I supposed to know that when I'm not here during the day and nobody told me to look for anything?" That's when it finally dawned on her that this was her fault. She stumbled through some excuses and then demanded that I go to the dumpster and find the papers. I told her the office opens in 15 minutes and I still have work to do. She stormed off and said she'd start looking in the dumpster herself. Now, while I cleaned, I knew I'd face her again before leaving because my car's parked right by the dumpster. So I thought of what I'd say to her as the final nail in the coffin. Sure enough, when I finished and walked out, the manager and a few other workers were already rooting through the dumpster. When she saw me, she demanded that I come help. I delivered my prepared line. "Ma'am, my job description is to take out trash. Your job description is to ensure the safety and confidentiality of your client's files." And I walked away to what I can only describe as a cartoon-like villain scream of pure frustration. A few hours later, I got a text. They're now installing a special inbox shelf for me to place any papers found on the floor so the workers can go through them. Guess sometimes you have to let people learn the hard way. I work maintenance for a fast food restaurant. When I started this job, I had a verbal agreement with the general manager. She'd retroactively approve all my overtime. We were only allowed 2 maintenance people, and one of them was the owner's son. Yeah, you can already tell where this is going. He didn't do his job at all. But of course, we couldn't fire him. Still, things were fine while the old GM was there. Our store actually scored the best during inspections out of all the owner's restaurants. But then she quit, and her replacement, first day on the job, tells me, "I'm not approving your overtime anymore." So I said, "All right then, can you put that in writing?" After that, once I hit 40 hours, I was done for the week. I'd turn off the work phone and relax. Usually, that happened by Wednesday. Now, our restaurant's been around for over 70 years, so things break a lot. The first week of this no overtime rule, the walk-in freezer broke. But guess what? I was already at 40 hours. By the time I found out, 3 days later, everything inside had gone bad. Thousands of dollars in frozen food gone. The next week, the fryer stopped heating. We couldn't cook most of the menu. And right in the middle of all that, a health inspector shows up. The place got red tagged. That was it. The owner lost it. He was ready to fire me until he called the old GM. And I showed him the email where the new GM said she wouldn't approve my overtime. Guess who got fired instead? Yeah, the new GM. Now my original deal, overtime and all, is officially part of my contract. And the best part? The owner personally checks in with me now, every week. Funny how quickly things change when the freezer starts melting.
I used to work in a retirement village with a communal dining room. And there was this awful family who lived only 15 minutes away, but almost never visited their mother. We'll call the mother Sam. Sam was kind, gentle, and always smiling. But her family? Let's just say they were the complete opposite. They constantly neglected her, didn't bring her new clothes, and honestly, I think most of her valuables had been stolen by them. They had power of attorney over her finances and health, so legally, there was nothing anyone could do. Now, fast forward to a hot Australian Christmas day. The village was hosting a big Christmas lunch for all the residents who couldn't go out that day. Families were welcome, but you had to book ahead. The invitation even said, "Please bring a jumper, the air conditioning will be cold." Naturally, Sam's family failed to book, and naturally, they were the only ones without jumpers. So I was the lucky one who got to find them a place to sit. I dressed Sam up, warm, cozy, and elegant, and I seated their family right under the big main air conditioning vent. 10 minutes later, Sam's son and daughter-in-law stormed up to me. "Can you please turn down the air conditioning? It's too cold." I smiled and said, "Yep, no problem, I can do that." And I did. I turned that AC down an extra 4 degrees. Pretty sure it was around 16 Celsius, if memory serves. Sam's family left earlier than any other guests that day. And Sam, she spent the rest of Christmas surrounded by people who actually spoke to her like a human being. And honestly, it was the warmest moment of the entire day. Oh, and just for my international friends, a jumper is what we call a sweater, though we used jumper cables to warm up the old folks until the Aged Care Commission decided that was a crime. Okay, I'll get this right this time. 10 years ago, I worked under a manager who could best be described as an old-school battle axe. It was an HR office, and I don't work in HR anymore, and this story is probably why. I was an intern, starting a white-collar HR job after 10 years of blue-collar work. I was so excited to finally be in a climate-controlled office. I had dreamed of this for years, and I put myself through university by my own bootstraps. I would have done anything to sit in an air-conditioned room. I had just broken my back a year prior, and finishing my final year was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. She was known across the entire office for being impossible to please, and for running through staff faster than copier toner. Nobody lasted more than a year. From day one, I was on her radar. I made the occasional typing mistake because of medication I was on that affects short-term memory. But I always ran spell check, I always proved my work. Still, she treated every single typo like a personal betrayal. She would scold me for the smallest things. Once, she gave me an hour-long lecture about professionalism because I wore a blue shirt instead of a white one. Another time, I wore a sweater to a client meeting because their thermostat was broken and it was minus 20 degrees Celsius outside. I got shouted at harder for that sweater than I ever did on a work site. Every single day felt like inhaling glass shards. Then came the instruction that broke the camel's back. She told me that I needed to deliver a daily oral report on every client file I managed. These weren't short updates. She expected me to know every number, every email, every call from memory. Word for word what was said.
If I got even one word wrong, I was not fit to be there. And then she said, "From the moment the sun rises on this office to the moment it sets, you are to report everything that happens in these reports." She knew I had a memory-related disability from a concussion. She knew it would overwhelm me. So I decided to take her words literally. That night, I opened Excel and began logging everything. Every keystroke, every click. I even practiced my delivery so I could recite it perfectly. The next morning, when she called me into her office, I began. Walked from my car to the building, opened the office door with my right hand, moderate pressure, entered the building, greeted the receptionist, made coffee in the Keurig for 25 seconds, sat at my desk, adjusted my chair, started computer, opened Excel, began typing reports, ensuring keyboard sound remained within acceptable volume to avoid disturbing senior management, arriving 45 minutes after 9 a.m. I went on like that for almost an hour, uninterrupted. She tried to cut me off, but I gently reminded her that I was reporting everything. When it was finally over, she just stared at me. A week later, HR called me in. Yes, HR has their own HR. I explained everything exactly as it happened, that I was simply following her directive word for word. I even had documentation, because by that point, I wrote down everything that happened in that office. They agreed it wasn't sustainable. Within a month, I was transferred to another department. 3 months later, that boss quit. I was laid off soon after, but I got a glowing reference. And honestly, that was all I ever wanted.